Good morning. We are wrapping up Fire Prevention Week, in which firefighters have been educating residents about the dangers of kitchen fires. And Jane Zook from the Colorado Springs Fire Department is here to talk more about those. We've been talking all the morning about how common they are.
Yes.
It's one of the leading causes, right?
It is, and they're so preventable. And really, we just need to watch what we're cooking. We need to be careful around the stove, make sure there aren't flammable things like homework and junk mail, and just really watching what we're doing. Using the buddy system, making sure that you have a spouse or your kids are letting you know that you're cooking on the stove, and to be mindful of that. And in the event of a fire, we really don't want to see that happen, but if there is a fire, there are some myths associated with trying to put it out. People think, oh, well, you can extinguish a grease fire with baking soda or flour, certainly not water, or, you know, with animal fats and vegetable oils, they get really hot.
Right.
But the best way to put a grease fire out, or any fire on the stove, is really just to have the lid nearby. And by putting that lid on, you're smothering it and you're taking away the oxygen source, and that's the best way to put out a fire.
And I like that because for me it's hard to remember. It's a, you know, panicked situation. Do I grab the flour? Do I grab the baking? I know that one of them is way wrong and you don't want to grab water.
Right.
But, so the lid is just a nice, easy
The lid
thing
is
to
good.
remember.
Always have a lid nearby.
And one thing you mentioned earlier, which I thought this was interesting, you don't think about it, but microwaves. You think, oh, there's no fire, but they're also dangerous.
Right, so people are making mistakes with microwaves, and it's really the leading cause of scald burns in the kitchen. And oftentimes we put something into the microwave, maybe we meant to heat it for 3 minutes, and we put 30 minutes on, we pull it out of the microwave, the steam is very hot, and that's an easy way to get burns. And it's also another leading cause of fires in the kitchen. For example, microwave popcorn. And microwave popcorn can get out of control. So being really careful with microwaves in the kitchen as well.
And also, when we're talking about the kitchen, let's talk about kids in the kitchen. What can you do to make sure your kids are staying safe as well as you?
Well, if you have younger kids, certainly you need to make sure this handle is turned to the back of the stove, because you don't want a pot that's hot pushed off the stove with the handle. And then the other thing is to establish a safe boundary in front of the stove and the oven. And that's easily done by putting a rug in front of the stove, maybe a 3-foot by 6-foot rug. And then when the kids are in the kitchen and you're cooking, you can say this is the safe zone and this is the area that they cannot go onto when you're cooking. So really easy tips, yeah.
That's great. And talk to me a little bit about how fast can these fires spread? I mean, you start in the kitchen, you think, it's going to be a small fire, but they can really get out of hand really quickly.
Definitely. When we're cooking with vegetable oils or animal fats, those greases are extremely flammable. And it's estimated that a fire can double in size every 30 seconds. So they can get big quickly and very, very hot. And you know, one thing we've seen, you know, some very bad burns with is someone trying to move a fire from the stove. And of course you've got some flames and you've got hot oil, and that oil can splash onto your face or onto your extremities, and we certainly don't want to see burns because of that. So the best thing to do, turn off the heat source and really try not to move the pan.
Tell me a little bit, for people who are wondering why there's a pile of papers under this, tell me what this is about.
Sure. Well, if your stove is anything like, you know, the average home, or especially someone who has children, you've got junk mail, you've got newspapers, you've got homework. So we really want to make sure that this stuff stays away from the stove, and, you know, you want to remove any flammable items away from the stove. So just some easy prevention tips, common sense kinds of things, but we have so many distractions in our lives, and we just want to make sure that, you know, you're really focusing on what you're cooking.
Now, I know in my house the kitchen is the kind of catch-all place for everything. That's where the mail goes, it's where my purse goes, you know, it's all kinds of stuff. So cleaning out that space before we start cooking.
Definitely. Start with a clear space.
Perfect. Any other, I mean, can people go to the website for more tips, or where can people go for it?
Certainly, the Colorado Springs Fire Department has a website with all kinds of educational tips, and it is Fire Prevention Month, and so there are all kinds of things out right now, and certainly the NFPA website, National Fire Protective Association, has all kinds of tips as well.
All right, thank you so much. Some really great information. We'll check in with Jane again in a little bit, and we'll be right back, but first here are last night's winning Cash 5 and Pick 3